So for example 4, we're going to apply the process that we just learned, to a real context. So Libby has 340 meters of fencing. She wants it to have an area specifically 600 meters squared. So what dimension should she use? All right, well, a couple things you already know, right? Perimeter of a rectangle is 2 lengths and 2 widths added together, and that needs to be 340. So she has 340 meters of fencing. We're only going to be able to write one equation, so we need to get the variables. We can't use L and W, so we got to write one of them, one of them with respect to the other. So if we solve 2L plus 2W equals 344W, you end up with 170 minus L. So when you think about the area, which is length times width, we can substitute W out for what we solved for, W up there, so 170 minus L. So your equation is L times, instead of W, 170 minus L. And the area is what we want to be 600. So if you distribute the L in, you get L squared minus 170L is equal to negative 6,000. And it's negative because we basically just multiplied everything by -1 there, right? Once you distribute it in, you got 170L minus L squared. If you multiply by -1, you want the L squared to be positive, essentially. So then everything else becomes negative. All right. Now you got to figure out what completes the square on 170. Even though 170 is a much bigger number than the first 3 examples that we looked at, the process is no different. You take 170 divided by 2, you get 85. Negative 85 if you did the negative, but again, you're squaring it, so it doesn't matter. When you square 85, you get 7,225. So that's the number you're adding to both sides. Right? When you do that, you get L minus 85 squared. Once you factor, is equal to 1,225 once you combine those two constants. Square root of 1,225 is plus or minus 35. You add 85 to both sides. I know we would leave answers as plus or minus in some of those previous examples, but when it's not imaginary or it's not irrational, you can actually add them together. So 85 plus 35 is 120, and 85 minus 35 is 50. So your length could be 120 or 50. If we say that the length is 120 and we solve for the width, you get the width is 50. If you say that the length is 50 and you solve for W, you get that the width is 120. So it doesn't make a difference. Your dimensions are going to be 120 and 50. It doesn't matter really which one you call the length or the width. So basically the answer is 2 sides are going to be 120, 2 sides are going to be 50. That makes a rectangle. That makes an area of 6,000. Okay? All right. Different context, but a similar question. It says a relationship between the time the ball was thrown and its height can be modeled by that equation, where h is the height of the ball after t seconds. Complete the square to find how long it will take the ball to reach a height of 20 feet. All right, so I'll tell you what, let's set it up together and then you can pause it and try it yourself. So we don't need to make a system of equations like we did on the last one. This is a little simpler than that. But we want the height to be 20, so we're substituting 20 in for h. Okay, first thing I would do is subtract the 4 to the other side, because again, you want to isolate the linear and the quadratic term. All right, the next thing I would do, I'm going to flip it around. So I have my variables on the left side. Doesn't really matter, but I like it that way. I'm also putting the quadratic first. Now, I don't want the quadratic to be negative. I also don't want it to be 16, so I'm going to divide everything by negative 16. And I get t squared minus 2t is equal to -1. At this point, I want you to try to solve it. So I'm going to pause here, you pause here, try to finish the rest of it, and then come back and check. Okay, so the first thing I would do is figure out what you need to do to complete the square. So take the -2, divide it by 2, and square it, and you get 1. So you're adding 1 to both sides. Don't let that confuse you, right? It's equal to 0, and that's okay. Because guess what? 0 is a square number because 0 times 0 is 0. So when you go ahead and complete the square, um, or well, you complete the square by adding 1, but when you factor the perfect square that's there, you get t minus 1 squared. Take a square root of both sides, and you get t minus 1 squared. Um, well, when you take a square root of that, you get t minus 1. Square root of 0 is just 0. It's not plus or minus because it's 0. It doesn't make sense. So then you just add 1 to both sides. What's different about the fact that you have 0 on the right side means you're going to get one solution, not two. And that's okay. That just means there's one solution. And the one solution is t equals 1, which interpreted into the context of the question means it's going to take 1 second for the ball to reach 20 feet high. Okay, so that's that. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Otherwise, we're going to look at example 5.